Well, good morning, fellow constitutionalists. This is the Wednesday edition of the Dan Clem Show, Christian Political Talk Show. This is episode 821. I'm your host. Dan Clem is your constitutional warrior fighting for the right just to be an American. It is June 14th, the year of our Lord 2017. Remember, we're a hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God's still in control, He does love you. And I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios here in beautiful Central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. And I do apologize for those of you who are watching this live on YouTube. I had some technical difficulties that I did not know. That I did not know were going to happen. I had a huge Windows 10 update this morning, and it messed everything up in my file folders, rearranged my file folders for some dumb reason. And I think it has something to do with their onboard OneDrive backup, cloud backup that I never used. And so I finally went in and uninstalled it. I didn't know you can uninstall that particular program, but I uninstalled it, and hopefully that'll take care of things. And hopefully, Dave, you can hear me. I see you in there. Hopefully everything will go good in there. Like I said, I restarted the YouTube, so I'll have a fresh YouTube. Those of you listening over Blog Talk Radio, you know I always upload another audio, so in about 40 minutes it's going to end for you folks. And we're just going to let that run out, and then I'll upload this video, or the audio to blogtalkradio.com. I do apologize to everybody. I was really getting into the show before I realized that I didn't have any volume whatsoever coming out, and that was because of this huge update. I about had it up to here with Windows. Every time they do something, they think they're doing it a better way by messing up things in your file systems or whatever. I don't understand that. Just update your program. Leave my settings alone. Hopefully, Dave, you can hear me now over at YouTube. I'm still streaming real good, and I'm still having issues with my CPU on my main computer, and that's mainly because it's an old quad core. So Kyle, my son, who does computers a lot in his spare time, he's going to be helping me look for another motherboard for this cabinet I have. There's nothing wrong with the cabinet. I might have to upgrade the power source because of power, but we're either going to go to a dual core system, and I could go with the dual core with the cores I have, with the CPUs I have, and really get some computing power out of it. So I don't have to go with a huge expensive rig to do that. We might be just replacing the motherboard in this computer down here just to help me get things broadcasted correctly, because I want the quality to be good for you folks. I don't want you to log on to my YouTube channel or listen on a podcast and the quality not be there. I did realize last night that my music somehow got too high and too loud, and you couldn't hear me at the end of the video over the music. It was just broadcasting too much. So we're hopefully I got that reset. Hopefully I got everything else going good with the microphones and everything. So we're ready to go down the road. Now, yesterday was an eventful day. Dave was telling me there's an apartment building in London that burnt down, and Google's reporting. They did have how many was up there. They did have an account. More than 70 people were injured. A lot of people still missing in this fire over in a high-rise in London. And the thing I want to say about it, that Dave pointed out that Fox and CNN were still covering all the Trump stuff. They didn't break over to this breaking news. So I thought that was kind of important to do that, but they couldn't be bothered with leaving the coverage of the Jeff Sessions narrative there. Also this morning, while Republican lawmakers, and as the story's coming out, the Republicans were having a softball practice for a charity softball event that was coming up, and a guy came in there and let loose with about 50 rounds of ammunition before he was shot. And now we're told the suspect's name is James T. Hodgkinson, and he's dead. He died from his injuries, but luckily there was a Capitol policeman there, I guess, who had his sidearm with him, or it might have got even worse. And so I'm not making any speculations or anything on who this guy is or what's going on here, but it seems kind of strange. Seems kind of strange to me that he was targeting just the Republicans there. Maybe if there was Democrats there, he might have shot him. Who knows? You know, I'm just sort of spitballing here and throwing things up against the wall like the Democrats and the anti-freedom crowd like to do. And that's what I'm titling my show today, Let's See What Will Stick to the Wall. So let's get started. Today's show is being brought to you by my affiliate marketer, Bluehost. That's who hosts the Dan Clements Show on the DanClementsShow.com, where I keep the show notes. I have other pages I'm set up there. Very inexpensive. They're still under $4 $4 a month for the service to host your website. If you want to start up a website or a blog or anything like that, you can do that there. You can actually store your videos there if you want to. It costs a little bit more. Everything costs a little bit. It's free market. Nothing's actually free. In the long run, the long and short of it, if you want to start up a website, Bluehost is excellent. It's WordPress ready, and WordPress is like falling off the log. I used to do my own take care of my own website with Joomla, and I don't know if any of you guys know anything about Joomla, but it's more intensive with Joomla than WordPress. WordPress, you plug it in. If it doesn't work, you plug it back out. But I haven't found any that I put in there that have not worked. I'm just looking over my CPUs. It's a little bit high, so I'm running in the background again. But I can't, for some reason, stop. But anyway, so if don't listen to my computer, folks. Listen to the Bluehost. They have never let me down. It's been a very good service, very easy to change templates if I want to. I have a fantastic, I have a template I like anyway. So if you want to help support the show, go to DanClementsShow.com and click on the Bluehost widget at the top of the page. Today's daily Bible reading comes from the book of Proverbs, chapter 10, verses 16 through 19. The labor of the righteous leads to life, the wages of the wicked to sin. He who keeps instruction is in the way of life, but he who refuses correction goes astray. Whoever hides hatred has lying lips, and whoever spreads slander is a fool. In the multitude of words, sin is not lacking, but he who restrains his lip is wise. And I want to go back up to that verse 17. He who keeps instruction is in the way of life, but he who refuses correction goes astray. And more I've been finding out and seeing that folks I'm in a discussion with a young lady on Twitter about voter ID, which we're going to talk about tomorrow. She thinks voter ID laws are discriminatory. I asked her to explain how, and she goes, well, you go do the research. And I'm like, you're the one who put the proposition out. You need to explain your side of it. And she tried to explain it, and I was doing some research yesterday on it, and her arguments didn't add up. And I was telling her how, with the logic and reason, how her arguments didn't add up. And I haven't heard back from her yet today, but and this is typical tactics, and that the anti-freedom, the progressive, if you're in this vernacular, the left does not stand correction. They will not be corrected because they think that they are more intelligent than anybody else out there, and they know more than you do, so they don't need corrected. And that's the way a lot of atheists and agnostics act, that they know better than God. And even though there's ample proof that there is a God out there, and it's easy to find if you're looking for it or want to see it. Today's quote meal comes from Charles H. Spurgeon. As sure as God puts his children in the furnace, he will be in the furnace with them. And I remember years ago, Lieutenant Matthews, he was a submariner. I was on a subtender over in Holyloch, Scotland, USS Hunley, AS-31. And that happens to be right there in the picture. I'll put my hand over here. Right there. And he told us one time in a lesson, he says, God never promised to take you out of the storms of life, but he did promise to take you through them. And when he said that, I remember like the children of God having to go through the Red Sea to escape the Egyptian army, and God led them right through that. God was with them the whole time. Today's daily Bible reading comes from Wayne Jackson over at ChristianCourier.com, and it's called The Dangers of Youthful Exuberance. And I think it's a good lesson too. I just found this last night. I think it's a good lesson for us today especially in light of what I was talking about on Monday, about how all these young people, these snowflakes we call them, and the report from Ulrich Baer at New York University, he had posted in the New York Times, where he said, well, we can't discount their experiences. What experiences have they had? What experiences have they had to being microaggressed against? You want to be aggressed against, go in and try to bail a friend out of a group of 4 or 5 high schoolers that think that he's stealing their girlfriend at a roller skating rink when I was stationed down in Charleston, South Carolina. You want to talk about aggression? There was no microaggressions there. It was full out on, full head on aggression. I think they were idiots for trying to take me on. I hate bullies, I do. These guys were acting like bullies, and this Danny Baldwin wasn't a big guy to be fighting with to begin with. And as a matter of fact, I don't think he liked to fight anyway. And I used to love to fight, folks. But, you want to talk about aggression, be aggressive physically against somebody. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. And there was a comedian after the video clip on it. When did that ever stop being relevant? So what, you call me a word, boo-hoo-hoo, get over yourself. Pull up your big boy panties or your big boy pants or your big girl pants and get on with your life. Don't let it bother you. And that's a huge thing in our society today. Too many people let words bother them. Especially if, like someone calls me a racist, I'll laugh in her face because they don't know me. And to call me a racist is the stupidest thing in the world. Or Islamophobic or sexist, whatever. I laugh in their face because it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't bother me the least bit because they can't prove it. I don't fall into this Kafkatrapping. And quite honestly, that's probably why a lot of folks on social media that I get in discussions with, I never get sucked into that, the Kafkatrapping, where I apologize. Well, you're just a racist. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm a racist. They're just throwing things up on the wall to see what sticks. As soon as you say you're sorry, it's stuck. And this is what's happening last night. I was watching Jeff Sessions and a little bit of the Rod Rosenstein testimonies, and the Democrats in Congress, and I'm pretty sure the mainstream media is right behind them, are throwing stuff up against the wall to see what sticks. And we're going through, and I wish somebody would calculate this, how many man hours, how much ink has been spilled, how much bandwidth has been used up to put out this fake narrative of the Russian collusion that the New York Times, and everybody's pointing back to a New York Times article, started with no factual basis for it whatsoever. And we're having hearings on it. Folks, this is ridiculous. The waste of money. Now, everybody's talking about how the First Lady, my brain just went Melania Trump, and Barron moved down to New York City. How much it costs the economy, how much it costs the taxpayers to have her live in New York City. And they said, and here's another thing, you got to give Trump credit for. They said that she was going to move down to the White House after Barron finished school up for this year. Well, guess what? School finished up. They packed a few things up. They're at the White House. And I don't know how many articles I've seen in passing that said she wasn't going to move down to the White House all these ideas that were put up on the wall by the mainstream media that she wasn't going to move down to the White House. Well, where's she at? Her and Barron moved to the White House. But people still give credibility to the mainstream media. A libertarian friend of mine lives up in Berwick that we're friends with on Facebook. I never met him. I'd like to go up and meet him sometime. Keeps putting these articles on how Jeff Sessions is going after marijuana. And, you can go over to the Attorney General's website, and see what they're putting out. And this is usually stories by the New York Times or Washington Post, which have no credibility. None whatsoever. They've wasted it all on all these fake news stories. So they keep putting these things up. And the other thing that really, I had never and I'm pretty attuned in politics, but I've never heard them talk about this idea, and it came up through Rod Rosenstein's testimonies. And let's play this clip here. Honestly, I just can't believe that the Democrats and the anti-freedom groups out there, and the mainstream media out there, keeps throwing this stuff up to see what will stick, and people are having to spend good time and energy defending against it. And it's, again, the left, whether they think they're doing it or not, they are practicing Kafkatrapping, trying to get these folks to apologize for something they didn't do in the first place. But as soon as you apologize for it, then you've owned it. Then you must have done it if you apologize. Why apologize if you didn't do it? And it irks me how the left works this way. And
may be disciplined or removed from office only by the personal action of the Attorney General. The Attorney General may remove a special counsel for misconduct, dereliction of duty, incapacity, conflict of interest, or for other good cause, including violation of departmental policies. The Attorney General shall inform the special counsel in writing of the specific reason for his or her removal. Now, as I understand, Mr. Rosenstein, in this matter, you are actually the one exercising hiring and firing authority because Attorney General Sessions is recused. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And at this point, have you seen any evidence of good cause for firing of Special Counsel Mueller?
No, I have not.
And have you given the special counsel full independence from the Justice Department to conduct his investigation?
Yes, Senator, I appreciate that question. At the last hearing I attended, I explained it would require a long time to explain exactly why. I'm confident that he has full independence. The short answer is, though, that regulation, as you may know, was written and implemented during the Clinton administration under the authority of Attorney General Reno. I know the folks who wrote that. They wrote it to deal with sort of situations, and I am confident that he will have sufficient independence, and it's certainly theoretically possible that the Attorney General could fire him. That's the only person who has authority to fire him, and in fact the chain of command for the special counsel is only directly to the Attorney General, or in this case the acting Attorney General, so nobody else in the department would have authority to do that, and you have my assurance that we're going to faithfully follow that regulation, and Director Mueller is going to have a full degree of independence that he needs to conduct that investigation appropriately.
Now, folks, again, who is bringing this up? I mean, this is the first time hearing of this. And if these, I want to use some personal terms, but I can't, because it wouldn't be right. It just wouldn't be right. But these anti-freedom senators, mainstream media out there, if they just go back and read the regulation, that's actually an executive order under Bill Clinton, Janet Reno, and Ken Starr. I've seen him on the news. They dug him up somewhere. And now, President Trump can do just about anything he wants, when it comes to the executive branch. But it seems to me that President Trump is not going to do something like this because it just create a firestorm he doesn't need. And nobody in the White House has brought this up. I don't even think anybody has been postulating it in the White House. There's been some stories out there that someone high in the administration or familiar with the administration had said this. But again, it's another one of these fake fabricated stories. And I'll continue to say that until they start naming sources. This garbage about anonymous sources is done with me. It's done. I don't care who you are. The mainstream media has stretched that so far beyond what it was originally intended to be. It's ridiculous. And they could say ham sandwich is our anonymous source, and they'd still publish that. And some people out there would still say it's credible. But as far as I'm concerned, a lot of the folks in the mainstream media has lost all credibility. So I'm just saying, folks, when you have stuff like this come up where, they're like Trump will fire Special Prosecutor Mueller. Well, I don't think that's even come across anybody's mind. Yesterday, they were talking a little bit about how people were saying, well, you know, Trump's going to pardon people after all this Russian collusion thing so they don't get in trouble. And I'm like, they're floating another story. Like I said, and they did this. Folks, they've done this, as far as I have been able to research and remember, racking my brain, as Attorney General Jeff Sessions says, they've been doing this clear back to, in my lifetime, Ronald Reagan. You know, trying to Kafkatrap all these people or throw these ideas up the wall. Clinton made an institution out of floating ideas. Just taking these ideas and floating them up and see if the public will accept them or not, and throwing things against the wall, you know, to try to the politics of personal destruction. He created an art form out of that, and so we have this thing where, you know, they just keep throwing these things up against the wall. Now I have this other. I watched the full Attorney General Jeff Sessions last night. It was close to 3 hours that he and I was watching that. There's I have some news items in here talking about Senator Leahy was totally upset that Attorney General Sessions sent his assistant Rosenstein, the Assistant AG, to an appropriations meeting. He thought, well, maybe the Attorney General doesn't think it was important enough for him to be there. And knowing that they scheduled these for the same day, and there was at least 2 other hearings besides the intelligence hearing that I watched last night and everybody's talking about, that Congress invited him to be, but he said, I can't make it because of scheduling conflicts, and the left and the anti-freedom senators like Leahy, and just beside themselves. Oh, how dare he not show up to our hearings, and how dare he send a surrogate there. It's called delegated authority. You ever hear of that? Huh? and quite frankly, I think a 3-hour Senate hearing is more than enough for one day for anybody, let alone have to sit. I think totally, if he had sat through all 3 of them, it would have been a full day. It would have been close to 12 hours of hearings. And I'm sorry, I don't care. Even the worst Democrat in Congress doesn't deserve that at all. Oh, President Obama wouldn't even deserve that in my book. Now, some people think he would, but I'm just saying that's a lot of testimony in one day. And I think you just got to pick your battles, and I think Jeff Sessions did that. Now, okay, now this is Senator James Risch, R-I-S-C-H, Risch. And he's blasting the Intelligence Committee over the Russian collusion investigation, and he has a poignant question to ask Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Give this a listen.
After that, this committee took that on as one of the things, and we spent really substantially more time on that than we have on the Russian active measures. We've been through thousands of pages of information, interviewed witnesses, and everything else. We're really no different than where we were when this whole thing started. But and there's been no reports that I know of any factual information in that regard. Are you aware of any such information?
Is that arose from the dossier, so-called dossier, Senator Risch? Is that what you're referring to?
Well, we're anywhere.
I believe that's the report that Senator Franken hit me with when I was testifying, and I think has been pretty substantially discredited, but you know more than I. But
Yeah, these reports, he's talking about the dossier, he's talking about the New York Times report about the dossier that got this whole thing started. There was no foundation for it, no proof for it. They were just, and it was all anonymous sources backing up what they were saying. And again, how much is this costing the American taxpayers? I'm pointing up to my monitor up here, because this is where the show's actually monitoring on YouTube. How much are these hearings costing the American people, the American taxpayer, to hold these hearings? And they complain about government waste on the Republican side, but Democrats have no problem wasting money on hearings like this. In the hearing, Senator Harris, I was reading articles this morning about it, just sort of briefing myself on everything. They said it was sexist of Attorney General Jeff Sessions to get mad with her and want to explain his answers. And she was just machine gunning him with questions. And finally, Senator McCain chimed in, and then Senator Byrne, who was in charge of the hearing, said, I'll take care of all this. You let me decide what's going on. And he told Senator Harris, let him answer the questions. You're going to ask a question, let him answer it. And quite frankly, this isn't a court of law. And I know the senators only have, in this hearing, 5 minutes apiece. I think that's plenty enough. And a yes or no answer is not good enough. That's what Harris wanted. Just give me a yes or no. And you're kidding me, right? I'd be the same way. I'd say, Senator, I'm not going to answer just a yes or no answer. I'm going to explain my answer so it gets on the record. And and even Jeff Sessions said that with her. And then later on, and just while we're talking about Senator Harris, these hearings were important enough for Senator Harris, as she got done with her question, she stayed there. One of the cameras from behind was sort of panning the senators, but it sort of fixated on her. She has her smartphone out, she's texting. And honestly, when I'm texting, I have a hard time concentrating, paying attention to anything. Maybe she doesn't. But it seems to me that she was texting and she didn't really care about the rest of the hearing. Matter of fact, it seemed like that the Democrats, and this is my own personal opinion about that, but the Democrats really didn't care about the actual Russian collusion. They were going after Jeff Sessions, almost every one of them. Senator Wynn, or Lyon, however you pronounce his name, this doesn't pass the smell test. Now, he has a pretty good snooter, but I think he can smell a lot. This doesn't pass the smell test, And for whatever reason, the Democrats could not get it in there. I think they understand it. I don't think they're idiots. I don't think they're stupid. But they couldn't get in their minds that when you're talking about a conversation between two individuals, and only one of those individuals is actually testifying, you cannot speak for the other individual, and you cannot, and there was no permission given for executive privilege, but neither was it restricted. And Department of Justice, and they're going to get these policies out. One of their policies is not to do that, to allow the president, the executive officer of the government, the president of the United States, have him have the opportunity to make sure that all this stuff is, that if there's questions asked, that they can decide whether they're going to invoke executive privilege or not. If you just blurt out the whole conversation, it's still going to be a he said, it's all on you, and there's no corroboration yet, and maybe this is something that the White House can legally invoke privilege. I mean, President Obama invoked privilege throughout his presidency, even on stuff that really, in the grand scheme of things, didn't matter if it got out or not, but he invoked executive privilege to sort of thwart any type of investigation looking into the things of his presidency. So this whole, like I said last Friday, this political theater that's going on here, in my opinion, I think James Comey sort of, how do I want to put this gently? I don't want to say blow things out of proportion, but his recollection of everybody leaving the Oval Office, including Jeff Sessions, was a lot different than Jeff Sessions was. And I don't think Jeff Sessions was lying about that. I think James Comey overstated the pause or whatever. And again, there were, if everything's to believe in Rod Rosenstein's memorandum that Jeff Sessions signed off on and put up to the President of the United States, firing Comey, a lot of this went back to his handling during the election. And then after his testimony, we see how bad he was at being the director of the FBI, because he wouldn't stand up to anybody. Wouldn't stand up to Loretta Lynch, wouldn't stand up to Obama, wouldn't stand up to Donald Trump. You can't be the director of the FBI and not stand up to your superiors, especially when you're in the right. You have a duty to inform them. And he didn't do it. Finally, the last video I want to get in on the show today is from Senator Cotton. I loved it. I loved it when we got to this one. Senator Cotton blows this whole collusion thing right out of the water, because if you watch this hearing, especially this hearing, and listen to what the Democrats ask, they do not ask a very, very important question. Now here it is. Let me get this set up here real quick. To me, it was hysterical.
Senator Cotton.
Well, I am on this side of the dais, so I can say a very simple question that should be asked. I am on this side of the dais, so a very simple question that should be asked is, did Donald Trump or any of his associates in the campaign collude with Russia in hacking those emails and releasing them into the public? That's where we started 6 months ago. We have now heard from 6 of the 8 Democrats in this committee, and to my knowledge, I don't think a single one of them asked that question. They've gone down lots of other rabbit trails, not that question. Maybe that is because, as Jim Comey said last week, as he said to Donald Trump, that on 3 times he assured him he was not under investigation. Maybe it's because multiple Democrats on this committee have stated they have seen no evidence thus far, after 6 months of our investigation and 10 months or 11 months of an FBI investigation, of any such collusion. I just suggest, what do we think happened at Mayflower? Mr. Sessions, are you familiar with what spies call tradecraft?
A little bit.
That involves things like covert communications and dead drops and brush passes, right?
That is part of it.
Do you like spy fiction? John Le Carre, Daniel Silva, Jason Matthews?
Yeah, Alan First. David Ignatius. James Bourne and Ignatius' his book.
Do you like James Bourne or James Bond movies?
No. Yes.
Have you ever, in any of these fantastical situations, heard of a plot line so ridiculous that a sitting United States senator and an ambassador of a foreign government colluded in an open setting with hundreds of other people to pull off the greatest takeover in the history of it?
Thank you for saying that, Senator Cotton. It's just like through the looking glass. I mean, what is this? I explained how, in good faith, I said I had not met with Russians because they were suggesting I, as a surrogate, had been meeting continuously with Russians. I said I didn't meet with them. And now the next thing you know, I'm accused of some reception, plotting some sort of influence campaign for the American election. It's just beyond my capability to understand, and I really appreciate, Mr. Chairman, the opportunity at least to be able to say publicly, I didn't participate in that and know nothing about it.
And I gather that's one reason why you want to testify today in public. Last week, Mr. Comey, in characteristic, dramatic, and theatrical fashion, alluded ominously to what you call innuendo, that there was some kind of classified intelligence that suggested you might have colluded with Russia, or that you might have otherwise acted improperly. You've addressed those allegations here today. Do you understand why he made that allusion?
Actually, I do not. Nobody's provided me any information.
Thank you, Matt. I have a lot of questions. Mr. Blunt asked you if you had spoken in response to Mr. Comey's statement to you after his private meeting with the President on February 14th or February 15th. You said that you did respond to Mr. Comey. Mr. Comey's testimony said that you did not. Do you know why Mr. Comey would have said that you did not respond to him on that conversation with you on February 14th or 15th?
I do not. There was a little conversation, not very long, but there was a conversation, and I did respond to him, perhaps not to everything he asked, but I did respond to him, I think in an appropriate way.
Do you know why Mr. Comey mistrusted President Trump from their first meeting on January 6th? He stated last week that he did, but he didn't state anything from that meeting that caused him to have such mistrust, to believe?
I'm not able to speculate on that.
Let's turn to the potential crimes that we know have happened. Leaks of certain information. Here's a short list of what I have. The contents of alleged transcripts of alleged conversations between Mr. Flynn and Mr. Kislyak. The contents of President Trump's phone calls with Australian and Mexican leaders. The content of Mr. Trump's meetings with the Russian foreign minister and ambassador. The leak of the Manchester bombing suspect's identity and crime scene photos. And last week, within 20 minutes of this committee meeting in a classified setting with Jim Comey, the leak of what the basis of Mr. Comey's innuendo was. Are these leaks serious threats to our national security, and is the Department of Justice taking them with the appropriate degree of seriousness in investigating and ultimately going to prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law?
Thank you, Senator Cotton. We have had one successful case very recently in Georgia. That person has been denied bail, I believe, and is being held in custody. But some of these leaks, as you well know, are extraordinarily damaging to the United States security. And we have got to restore a regular order principle. We cannot have persons in our intelligence agencies, our investigative agencies, or in Congress leaking sensitive matters on staff. So this is, I'm afraid, will result in, is already resulting in investigations, and I'm fear that some people may find that we say hadn't leaked.
Thank you. My time has expired. Before the record, it stated earlier that the Republican platform was weakened on the point of arms for Ukraine. That is incorrect. The platform was actually strengthened. And I would note that it was the Democratic president who refused repeated bipartisan requests of this Congress to supply those arms to Ukraine.
All right. One of the takeaways in that, besides Senator Cotton pointing out that all the Democrats, they don't give a hoot about the Russian collusion. They really don't, because are they asked about it? You know, as far as the way Senator Cotton did. And but the thing I want to point out is what Senator Cotton asked Attorney General Sessions about the leaks. 20 minutes after the closed door, behind the door, classified session with James Comey last week, we had reports about what went on inside there. These things are supposed to be closed door. They're not supposed to be leaks coming out of there. Now, you can go through the regular channels, and you know, your Freedom of Information Act, try to get the information from these, as long as there isn't classified. From what I understand, James Comey is going to testify about some sensitive and classified things behind the closed door sessions. There should have been no leaks coming out of there. And yet 20 minutes afterwards, we're finding out that what James Comey said in there, and Attorney General Jeff Sessions disputed the whole thing. And it amazes me. It amazes me how much hatred there is on the left, on the anti-freedom groups out there, for Republicans, for this president, for anything that he's doing. This, real quick here, while I was showing you that, that video clip, the shooter who is dead, James T. Hodgkinson, was a Bernie Sanders supporter. He constantly put defamatory cartoons and articles on Facebook, and he tweeted a lot against the Republicans. And it just, I'm looking at a heavy article. I'll put this in today's show notes page. But I'm looking at this heavy article here that they have 5 things about him. He's living in Alexandria, he's from Illinois. He posted about his anger with progressive Republicans several times on his Facebook page and shared an anti-scalist cartoon. He goes on, he was accused of pulling out a hair of his girlfriend in 2006, but battery charges were never charged, so he seems like he's kind of an angry guy. His wife says he had been living in Alexandria for 2 months, and records show he did not renew his business license. I didn't go through and see what type of business, I'm just hitting headlines. And then he was armed with a rifle and began firing from behind third base as congressmen were on the field practicing. And so here he's attacking congressmen that are all Republican with a rifle and with the intent, as far as I'm concerned, to try to kill him. You know, because as far as I'm concerned, in a self-defense shooting incident, if you pull a gun out and start shooting, I'm going to assume that you're trying to kill me, not just wing me an injury. You're trying to kill me. You're trying to put me down. You're trying to end my life. You know, and that's you have to go with this here too. He wasn't just there, you know, scaring them. I mean, he actually took shots at people and put people in the hospital. Luckily, he didn't kill anybody. And this, everything is coming out now about this guy. He's a left-wing wacko. He's a progressive wacko. He loves Bernie Sanders. He hates Trump, hates the Republicans, everything they're doing. And so this is his idea of free speech, as it were, exercising his Second Amendment rights in an unlawful way. He was aggressing against folks. Unbelievable. Unbelievable what's going on in America today. You know, and folks, things like this Russian collusion story, things like Indivisible Group and Common Cause, Let America Vote, and they're putting up these false narratives. These things are feeding into the anger of, and I'm going to go back to the old paradigm, the left, the progressive social justice tyrants, social democratic left. They're feeding into that anger. They're telling these folks that you're being messed over. You're just being messed over by the people with no facts. Like I said, tomorrow we're going to talk about voting. I've had a young lady on Twitter. We're talking about this, and she was, the Texas Senate Bill 14 was struck down by the courts. And when I got to reading through the court case and did some research into it, it seemed like they had to go a long way to find this one community down in Houston. It was the only one that was talked about, okay? This one community down in Houston where these folks had a difficulty, I put that in quotations, difficulty getting an ID so they could vote. And this whole case is based, this whole rebuttal against the Texas SB 14, the voter ID laws. And she is consistently on this tirade with no facts. You know, she puts a story up real quick here, and this is just a taste of what's going to happen tomorrow. She puts a story up about a guy that lived in, moved to Wisconsin, lived down in Illinois, and something was wrong. And this is the funny thing. She says, well, his birth certificate was wrong. Okay, I don't know how it's wrong. Honestly, I don't know how you get a birth certificate wrong and the parents not correct it right away. It's real easy. Matter of fact, our son, born in Lawrence County General Hospital down in Ironton, Ohio, his original birth certificate was wrong. It had to be redone, and we got it redone before we left the hospital. I mean, if you don't do that, that's on you. It's not on the state that's requiring you to have a voter ID. And what's happened was he didn't make sure that his ID in Illinois matched his birth certificate. Mine does. Everything I have, all my identification, social security card, my driver's license, match the name on my God-given name that my folks gave me, Daniel Eugene Clemens. It matches. But this guy's didn't match. He assumed it was one thing, didn't check his birth certificate, went through life thinking it was one way. And when he had to get voter ID or he had to get ID so he could vote up in Wisconsin, they said it's not a valid ID because it doesn't match your birth certificate when he brought his birth certificate up. So he had to go back down and try to get that changed. And he's trying to get the birth certificate changed instead of just changing everything else to match the birth certificate. He didn't want to do that. And she says, well, here's voter suppression. Oh, my, the world's falling down. The sky's crashing down our heads because one guy didn't want to do his due diligence to make sure that his IDs matched his birth certificate. And if he didn't like what was on the birth certificate, go to court and get it changed. There's one guy. And then this court case down in Texas, it's like they picked this poorest Hispanic neighborhood that they could find, I think down in Houston area, I believe that's where it was at. I'm going to talk about this tomorrow. And the problem is, and I stated this, and this is what happens all the time in doing this research. People have time to do everything else in the world. People have time. I go to convenience stores all the time to get milk on my way home, stuff like that. People have time to stop in there, get their lottery tickets, get their cigarettes, get their beer if the convenience store sells beer, and go home. But, oh, woe is me, I don't have any time to go register to vote or go down to, and from here, it's a 15-minute drive from my house over to the photo ID center in Selinsgrove. Maybe 20 if there's no traffic. And Dave knows what I'm talking about with my driving habits. My driving habits is probably close to 15 to 20. A little bit of a lead foot. But my thing is, they have the time to do everything that they want. And matter of fact, a lot of them I see they pull up in a car. Well, they have to have a driver's license to drive a car. If you don't, it's illegal. You have to have a driver's license to do a lot of menial things in your life. Get on an airplane, get a passport, things like that. Or maybe not a passport, but, it's still a photo ID. There's a lot of things, when you're younger to prove you're old enough to buy cigarettes or alcohol, all that kind of stuff. And get into federal buildings now, you have to have a photo ID. Is that discriminatory against these folks so they can't get in a federal building and redress their grievances with the federal government because they don't have a photo ID? Again, they have time to do everything else. In the same way with research and putting up these fake and phony stories and supporting these fake and phony stories on the internet. It amazes me. It amazes me how these people operate. They have time enough in their lives to do everything else they want. But when it comes to voting, and you have to have an ID, oh man, that's so much of a burden, man. I'm not going to be able to get my 12-pack take home with me because I got to take time out of my day to go down and get an ID and go register to vote. Matter of fact, most states, at least Pennsylvania's this way, they ask you when you get your photo ID if you want to register to vote if you're not registered. I have no problem with that. I really don't. A lot of people do, voter. I don't have any problem with that. I actually sat there the last time I got my photo on my driver's license. There was like 4 or 5 people that went through the line and said, I want to get registered. And they asked me that. I'm already registered, thank you. I took care of that. And investigating stories either with the Russian probe or healthcare or voting, anything like that, they always want to put the burden on you to disprove them. And I don't do that. If you're going to put out a proposition, an argument, on Facebook, Twitter, social media, on YouTube, on Blog Talk Radio, anything, if you're going to put that argument out, okay, then you need to be able to back it up. It's not up to me to research to see if you're right or if you got your facts straight. It's up to you to present the facts to bolster your argument and to bolster your opinions. And the left doesn't want to do that. It takes too much time. It's easier to listen to these propaganda groups out there in the anti-freedom movement here in America saying that the Republicans are going to ruin your health care. 25 million people are going to be kicked off the planet compared to Obamacare. And those numbers aren't even true to begin with because they're a 10-year projection. We don't even know what next year is going to bring, let alone 10 years down the road. To make 10-year projections is ridiculous. And to believe them is even more ridiculous. And yet, they take it lock, stock, barrel. Oh, it's the gospel truth. And quite frankly, if they just repealed Obamacare outright, they'd have had it done already. Repeal it. There's no need for Republicans to replace this. I don't know where they got this idea where we have to replace this stuff. Just put some regulations out. And it should be debated. It shouldn't be behind closed doors. It should be debated on open floor. I do agree with some of the anti-freedom groups about that. This should be out on open floor debate so we can see what our representatives and senators are saying. But we don't have that with this. The Republicans seem to be behind closed doors on all this. Make some sensible regulations, like take away the portability, squash that, and allow health insurance companies to sell insurance across state lines just like you do automotive insurance. And then put a law out there saying that after, if someone buys a policy with a pre-existing condition, you're allowed to make them wait and put a limit on it. Don't leave it up to the insurance companies what they're going to say how long they got to wait. Tell the insurance companies that they have to give them 6 months. If they pay their premiums for 6 months, then you got to cover them, and not at a high risk pool. You got to cover them because they're paying their premiums. Okay, I've read libertarian arguments for that, and they're good arguments. Okay, we do have to protect a little bit the consumer from the health insurance companies, but we don't have to rewrite the whole system. We need to get rid of Obamacare, and we need to quit trying to replace it, just repeal it, and put some common sense stuff in it. Let the free markets take care of it, folks. And once the free markets get involved and competition takes place, which we haven't had competition in healthcare in my lifetime. We haven't. We just have not. And these people that are in the anti-freedom groups, the progressives out there, the social justice tyrants and everything, well, free markets had their chance, and they failed. They didn't. They never did. The free markets tried to get in on it and try to do some things with their both hands and one leg tied behind their back, hop around one leg. That's not free markets at all. But these folks go around like chickens with their heads cut off, not doing the research that they need to do to bolster their opinion or their argument. They want you to do the work, and I'm just not going to do it anymore. Like with this young lady on Twitter, I says, it's not my job to sit here and research your position as far as supporting your position. My research, you put the basic premise out that voter ID is discriminatory. And I asked a simple question, how can it be discriminatory when it applies to everybody equally and it doesn't matter what your race or anything is? It's not discriminatory. No matter what the judge says, and then that ruling was idiotic. They said, well, if it has one element of racism in it, then the whole thing is considered discriminatory. And I'm like, and I said they had to go down cherry pick, and I said, I don't want to get too far into this. I'm sort of rambling on here right now because I'm just so frustrated with the anti-freedom groups out there that keep throwing this stuff up against the wall, causing good ink and bandwidth to be wasted to try to debunk it. And quite honestly, I think not me so much, but the Republicans and those on the right out there and those that claim to be for freedom and liberty out there, they give it too much credence. And they try to go in and debunk it instead of hounding. If the New York Times put this article out, which they did, about the Russian collusion, what the rest of the new mainstream media should have done was hounded them and hounded them and hounded them for the evidence. And even said in that last night, if they have evidence, give it to us so we can have it. Give us the evidence you have for your accusations of Russian collusion so we can have it. So unless there is some out there, maybe. But if they don't turn it over, there's only one conclusion we can come with. There was no evidence to begin with. Plain and simple. And we should have hounded, the new Main Street media should have hounded publications like New York Times, Washington Post, the Atlantic, Journal-Constitutional, for putting out these fake stories and fabricated. CNN, same thing. We shouldn't be sitting here wasting our time trying to debunk all this stuff. We should be at the outset, we should have made them prove it. We should have made them prove it. If they're not proving it, what is there to debunk? Now, we can put out our positions, which I think we should put out our positions, but I think on the onset of a situation like this, pardoning people that are involved in Russian collusion or firing special prosecutor Mueller, it's just it's stuff thrown up against the wall, see if it'll stick. Just put it up there. And when are we going to learn? When are we going to learn with these people? We need to take these people to task on this stuff. We need to take people to task on this stuff. And honestly, folks, as soon as you are reading an article and you start seeing an anonymous source that cannot be confirmed, stop reading. Because you're wasting your time reading the rest of the article because it doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. And I think the more people that do that, and the more people that quit on a daily basis reading these uncredible, they have no credibility whatsoever anymore. New York Times, Washington Post, and some other, a lot of the leftist internet publications like Daily, Cost, Mother Jones, and Slate, and Salon that I go and look at articles and stuff like that. A lot of them have no credibility either because they're not holding the people accountable that they're getting these stories from, and they're just running with this narrative that's being put out there because they hate Trump, they hate Republicans, they hate anything conservative. So anything, doesn't matter if it's true or false, anything that's said or even thought or even dreamt of is fair game to publish as a story. And again, if they can't prove it within that article, we need to quit reading them. We need to quit reading them. That's why I go and make sure the sources that I use are very, very credible. That the sources I use are 100% credible, that they reference what they're saying. That means they put a link either in the article or footnoted at the bottom that you can go, and it's just not, the one thing Huffington Post does this the most in my research. I was researching an article in here, and I'll get to some of these tomorrow, but I was researching some articles in here from the Huffington Post. Trump can't fire special counsel probing Russian interference. Jeff Sessions asked top federal prosecutors to resign. There's some stories in there. They're trying to make a story out of all these, Baheen up in New York, these assistant attorney generals throughout the United States. It's not unprecedented for a new AG to come in and ask for their resignations and put people that they trust or they want in those positions. It's not unprecedented. Obama did it. Bush did it. Clinton did it. Bush 1 did it. Ronald Reagan did it. As far as I know, presidents have been doing it throughout our history. But because the Trump administration has done it, the sky is falling. The sky is falling. And what I want to point out there, if you look at their references, they never reference an outside source. They're always referencing another article that they did. So they're getting these clicks on these articles that they did. And they don't reference. I was going through this whole article, just hovering over the links. And every one of them was a Huffington Post article. Huffington Post. And if you're a guy like me, you run the references, you actually click on them and run them, that's just another click for them. They can show their advertisers, man, look at all these articles, we're getting clicks on them. And you can see where it goes to. If it goes to an outside source, I'll click on it. If it goes to an internal source, not going to do it. Not going to do it, wouldn't be prudent. So you got to be wary when you're consuming news, folks. And we have to, honestly, if you pay for your news service online and your newspapers and stuff like that, you have to start demanding. You have to start demanding that they supply their sources. They can confirm, even if they're anonymous sources, if they can confirm them with a separate source that maybe isn't anonymous, then they would have a little bit of credibility. But if they don't, why are you still paying for that stuff? I know people that complain about the New York Times all the time, and they still have a yearly subscription to it. Not me. I wouldn't. Wouldn't at all. I wouldn't even go on their paywall. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to give them that money. They don't deserve it. Now, if they climb back up and earn their credibility back and their respect, then I might think about it. But I don't understand why people continue to buy and pay for the New York Times when it is, and the same way CNN, why they keep watching CNN. I know my buddy Dave watches CNN. And I refuse to give them the airtime. Even though I don't have cable, I try not to even click on their, honestly, I don't even subscribe to their channel on YouTube. And I get all my stories elsewhere. So I want foreign news, I watch Sky News. You know, when my buddy Dave talked about this last night, the London fire with the apartments, I quickly went over to Sky News, and boy, it was wall-to-wall in Sky News. And so if anything's happening over in England and Europe, I use Sky News. If it's happening over here in the United States, my number one source for news is One American News Network. My number one source of news on the computer is cnsnews.com. 3 very credible, reliable, researchable sources. And I think if you use those 3 as your basis and then branch out from there, I don't think you can go wrong on your personal news coverage. Well, I see we're at the hour mark on my timer over at YouTube, so we're gonna put the show to rest tomorrow. We're gonna be talking about voter ID and is it discriminatory or not, and I'm gonna have a couple other articles that I'll share with you on that. Please don't forget to go over to the DanClementsShow.com and click on the show notes page so you can see other articles I didn't get to today, or I just put up that maybe you might be interested in, and go research them from there. So. I just want to put that out to you folks. So, I really love what I'm doing here, and sometimes I do get passionate. If I get over passionate, folks, tough. It's just who I am. I'm Dan Clements. I'm your host of the Dan Clements Show. Remember, if you aim enough, you can hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day, folks, and God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow.